As many of you know, over the past 48 hours, the United States military has launched overnight strikes against Iranian-linked targets after a U.S. Apache helicopter was shot down near the Strait of Hormuz. Roughly 20 sites have been hit, and Iran did their best to hit back, firing a limited number of drone and missile assaults on American military installations in Bahrain and Kuwait and Jordan. President Trump posted on Truth Social, quote, "Iran's military is a complete and total mess. Much of it, like their Navy and Air Force, doesn't even exist anymore. They've been completely defeated. Iran is all talk and no action. The bully of the Middle East is dead. They've taken too long to negotiate a deal that would have been great for them. Now they will have to pay the price." So clearly, Trump's patience has run out with the various factions within the regime, each sending out their own contradictory messages. And this is because the regime has broken up into what is called the mosaic, right? We've been talking a lot about this over the last several weeks, the so-called mosaic doctrine. It's a decentralized defense doctrine that allows the IRGC to split up into 31 largely independent regiments in the case that their top leadership gets wiped out like it did. So the mosaic gives provincial commanders the authority to act autonomously without waiting for Tehran's approval. But its Achilles heel is that it's nearly impossible for them to act in a unified and coordinated and consistent way, since so much of their command and control and communications capabilities have been completely wiped out. So that's why you're seeing these very, sporadic launches and movements of the regime. It doesn't seem to make any single sense, and it doesn't because there isn't a single government running things in Iran. The regime has been splintered into various factions. So Trump hasn't been negotiating with Iran as if the nation had a single coherent regime. He's negotiating with the various factions. And what he's been doing with the ceasefire is he's been trying to pit these factions against each other. He's been making competing offers of money, power, security to different factions and watching what happens next. So we've had 50 days of negotiations with these various factions, 50 days of sitting across the table from factions that have spent decades perfecting the art of buying time for enrichment, time for weapons development, time for proxy forces, time for survival. The key to understanding what's happening here is that we've actually only had a couple of weeks of actual war in all of this. Iran was rendered relatively inert within about 14 days. So the last 2 weeks of the military strikes were basically cleanup missions to put Iran in a position where they simply could no longer project power. And then we, of course, blockaded their blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, which has been economically devastating, not just for Iran, but for their chief financier, China. China has been buying 80 to 90% of Iran's sanctioned oil at a major discount. And that, of course, has been radically disrupted with the blockade, which is costing Iran $500 million a day and basically destroying their oil fields as stagnant oil gets all congealed and clogs up inside the pipelines. And now we're finding out that U.S. armed forces have for the last several days been effectively accompanying and protecting commercial oil ships successfully through the Strait of Hormuz right under the regime's noses. Here's President Trump.
This war is over. I can say it now. Something you didn't know. We've been taking out millions of barrels of oil. Nobody knows it. You know who doesn't know about it? Iran, until right now. We took out the other night 22 ships, late at night with no lights, because they don't have any radar, because we blasted the crap out of it.
So Iran literally has no cards. The regime, or better, its factions, have no leverage in these negotiations that have been going on now for 2 months. And now President Trump is in effect saying that there's no possibility of negotiating any coherent deal with such a completely fractured, dysfunctional leadership that's barely clinging to power.